March 1934. Debts. Remember, debt means that you owe something to someone, usually money. Daddy is thinking of taking a loan from Mr. Roosevelt and his men. So we know by Mr. Roosevelt and his men that he needs to take a loan from the government, from the country, to get some new wheat planted, where the winter crop has spindled out and died. Mr. Roosevelt promises Daddy won't have to pay a dime back until the crops come in. Daddy says, I can turn the fields over, start again. It's sure to rain soon. Wheat's sure to grow. Ma says, what if it doesn't? Daddy takes off his hat, roughs up his hair, puts the hat back on. Of course it'll rain, he says. Ma says, Bae, it hasn't rained enough to grow wheat in 3 years. Daddy looks like a light brewing. He takes that red face out of his to the barn to keep from feuding with my pregnant Ma. I ask Ma how, after all this time, Daddy still believes in rain. Well, it rains enough, Ma says, now and again to keep a person hoping. But even if it didn't, your daddy would have to believe. It's coming on spring, and he's a farmer. March 1934, state tests. When I got home, I told Ma our school scored higher than the whole state on achievement tests, and I scored top of 8th grade. Ma nodded. I knew you would. That's all she said. She was proud, I could tell, but she didn't coo like mad dogs, Ma, or go on like Mrs. Killian used to. Daddy says that's not your Ma's way. But I wish it was. I wish she'd give me a little more to hold on to than I knew you could. Instead, she makes me feel like she's just taking me in, like I was so much flannel, dry on the line. March 1934, fields of flashing light. I heard the wind rise and stumbled from my bed, down the stairs, out the front door, into the yard. The night sky kept flashing. Lightning danced down on its spindly legs. I sensed it before I knew it was coming. I heard it, smelled it, tasted it. Dust. While Ma and Daddy slept, a dust came, tearing up fields where the winter wheat set harvest for June. Stood helpless. I watched the plants surviving after so much drought and so much wind. I watched them fry or flatten or blow away. Like bits of cast off rags, it wasn't until the dust turned toward the house like a fired locomotive, and I fled. Barefoot and breathless back inside, it wasn't until the dust hissed against the windows, until it ratcheted the roof, that Daddy woke. He ran the storm, his overalls half hooked over his union suit. Daddy, I called, you can't stop dust. Ma told me to cover the beds, push the scatter rugs against the doors, dampen the rags around the windows, wiping dust out of everything. She made coffee and biscuits, waiting for Daddy to come in. Sometime after 4, rubbing low on her back, Ma sank down into a chair at the kitchen table and covered her face. Daddy didn't come back for hours. Not until the temperature dropped so low it brought snow. Ma and I sighed, grateful, staring out at the dirty flakes. But our relief didn't last. The wind snatched that snow right off the fields, leaving behind a sea of dust, waves and waves and waves and waves of dust ripping across our yard. Daddy came in. He sat across from Ma and blew his nose. Mud streamed out. He coughed and spit out mud. If he had cried, his tears would have been mud too. But he didn't cry, and neither did Ma.